Hello, A-Push students. My name is Mr. Stamper, and I'm here to talk to you today about how to handle the short answer questions on the AP US History exam. Short answer section comes after the multiple choice and before the DBQ, right? There are four sections to the exam. This is the second thing you do. For the short answer, you're going to have 40 minutes, and it's worth 20% of your overall score. So like with every other part of the exam, you want to try to do as well as you can on every part. Short answer is no different in this regard, all right? Now, with the short answer, you're going to have three questions, right? And every question's got three parts. Question number one is required. You've got to answer question one. You don't have a choice. And in question number one, what they're going to do is they're going to have you analyze what we call a secondary source. The idea with this is that you're going to look at material in some capacity where you're going to look at people who've formed an opinion about A-Push in some capacity, right? And as a result of that, we, by definition, call this a secondary source. In this case, you got Crane and Zagari. These are two historians. This is from the 2019 AP US History exam. They're two historians. What they've done is they've written two responses concerning women and the revolution and the impact on women. All right. So you're going to comment on, the students on 2019 had a comment on their opinions about how the revolution affected women. Question number one is going to cover time periods 3 through 8. That's 1754 all the way up to 1980. It's a wide time period, so you don't want to ignore any one thing, right? You got to do question number one. Question number two is a little different in that rather than do a secondary source, question number two, you're going to be analyzing a primary source. So now you're the historian, and you're going to be looking at the actual primary source itself. In this case, from the 2019 AP exam, Frank Triplett, The March of Destiny. They had this sketch or drawing here, and students had to look at this to sort of answer the question, right? It's all about the Oregon Trail. Once again, like with question number one, question number two concerns time periods 3 through 8. That's 1754 to 1980, once again. And then for question number three, now it's good because now you get a choice, all right? So question number one's required. Time periods 3 through 8. Now, question number two is required. Time periods 3 through 8. Question number three is really a choice between two of them. All right. You don't have any sources on this one. So while question number one looks at a secondary source, question number two looks at a primary source. Question 3 or 4, depending on which one you answer, you don't have any sources at all, which is good because there's nothing to interpret, right? Option 1 here covers time periods 1 through 5. That's 1491 all the way up to 1877. Option number 2, which is question number 4, covers time periods 6 through 9, and that's 1865 to 2001. So here you get to pick sort of where you feel strongest with. All right, that's the idea. All right. Now, what's the best way to go about handling this? Well, hopefully all of this will click with you. All right. Number one, all right, when you approach the short answer questions, make sure you have at least 2 sentences for every question. All right. Try to avoid one sentence responses, and I'll tell you why. All right. If we go back to our samples here, all right, you'll see this common refrain at the beginning of every question. Briefly explain, briefly describe, briefly describe. Question 3, the same thing, briefly describe, briefly explain. Look at question 2. Again, once again, we see it again. There it is, right? Question 1, there it is again. Briefly describe, briefly explain, briefly explain. The point being, it's hard to explain or describe anything in complete fashion in just one sentence. Doesn't mean it's impossible. It can be done, but it is hard to do. All right. Think to yourself, avoid the one sentence responses because they almost always are insufficient. All right. Use multiple sentences. All right. You're going to have enough space to get down A, B, and C. All right. In your box. So use the space. Consider writing down as many sentences as it takes to answer the question, but you want to be direct at the same time. We'll talk about that in a second. On the short answer part of the exam, remember, you got 3 questions and 3 parts, right? Number 1, you got to answer it, ABC. Number 2, you got to answer it, ABC. Question number 3, you got a choice between 3 or 4, and each have A, B, and C. So ultimately, it's 3 times 3 equals 9. You got 9 little questions. Manage your time. Make sure you have a response for A, B, and C of every question you answer. Don't leave anything blank. Look, if you leave something blank, you and I both know what you got. 0, don't it? Avoid that. We want to make sure that you get at least a chance of getting a point at every letter, right? You're not going to get a point unless you put something down. Put something down. Manage your time. You got 40 minutes. Make sure you've got some kind of answer for every letter of every question you answer. The beauty of the short answer is that you don't have to play around with a contextualization or give introduction or thesis. Just answer the questions directly. No fluff, no poetry. Just get after it. All right. You don't have a lot of time, right? You got 9 little questions to answer in 40 minutes. When you do the math on that, you realize all things considered equal, you just don't have a lot of time. Be direct. Answer the questions directly. Go right after them and answer them with specific evidence and try to be direct. The last thing on this slide is you want to use complete sentences, no bullets. All right. Don't use fragments. All right. We are instructed to not score fragments. We're not supposed to give credit for fragmented ideas or bulleted answers. You have to use sentences. All right. So make sure that when you're writing the short answer responses, you're using complete sentences. All right. That's critical. All right. Define or explain, define, and clarify. First bullet up there. Do the one thing you are asked to do. Do not provide multiple examples if you are asked for just one. So what we see as a common refrain on these questions is over and over again, they'll ask you to do one thing. Briefly explain one. Briefly describe one. Briefly describe one. You can see it again up here. If I look at question 2, all right, it's down there, right? Briefly describe one. Briefly explain one, all right? We look at question 1. There it is again. Briefly explain one. And half the time when they do this, they actually capitalize the word one, right? You can see that. All right, they don't do it every time, but a lot of times they capitalize it. Look, if I'm texting you and I'm capitalizing, what am I doing? I'm yelling at you, man. They're yelling at you. Do one. We want one. We don't want multiples. All right. Some students don't get that. And so what they do is when they write a response, they say, well, I'm not sure if I'm correct. I got 3 ideas rolling around in my head. I'm going to put all 3 things down just in case, because I figure one of the 3 is right. Wrong. When we score these things, we are told to only score the first thing the students put down. If you have multiple examples and you're only asked to do one thing, we only score the first one. And it's happened before where I will score something and I'll have a student that will put down 3 things. Number 1, the first thing they put down is wrong, but number 2 is right. Number 3 could be right, but they still get 0 because I'm instructed to only score the first one, right? So what you got to do on the AP exam is when you sit there and say, all right, I don't know if it's this or this. I got 2 things. I'm not really sure which one. You got to make an educated guess in the moment. All right. You guys are smart. Make an educated guess. Look at the 2 things in your head and think to yourself, all right, I think this is the better answer. I'm running with that. And you make that call. All right. When you do the short answer, like with every other part of the test, when you put pen to paper on the APUSH exam, drop specific evidence. You try to be as specific as you can and drop as much evidence as you can all the way through the exam. Every time you put pen to paper, do the best you can on that. All right. And when you drop the evidence, then you want to make sure that you define, clarify, and explain what the evidence is in relation to what's being asked of you. All right. When we score these things, when I'm scoring a paper, I'm looking at a student. If a student goes general, I think, well, the student doesn't know what they're talking about. If they go specific, good. All right, that's what we want. But the only way I'm going to know that student knows what that evidence is and why that evidence matters and how that evidence is good for the question being asked of them is if they go into detail about telling me what the evidence is, right? So make sure you show your reader, I know what I'm talking about. So when you drop evidence, explain it, all right? When you drop it, explain it, all right? You want to keep your entire answer in the box, A, B, C, and you can see that down here, right? Your box is basically going to be like almost the front side of a whole sheet of paper. It's going to be pretty close to that, all right? Put your entire answer in there. So in other words, when I say the box is for A, B, and C of question 1. And then you flip the page, and then there's another box for question 2, A, B, and C. So put A, B, make sure it's in a box. We are technically only allowed to score what is in the box. We cannot score what is outside the box. So stick it in the box. You should have plenty of room in there to explain yourself thoroughly and get full credit for these things if you put all of your answers in a box, all right? The last thing I'll tell you, all right, when you're approaching this exam, this is how I want you to do it, all right? When you sit for the exam, they're going to say, all right, students, You have 40 minutes for the short answer part of the exam. Go, boom, and you turn the page. All right. When you do that, I want you to look at it this way. All right. First thing I want you to do is I want you to look at all three questions. Look at the first one. Take a second. Look at the first one and say, okay, I got it. This one's about women. This one's about the revolution. I kind of have a feel for what I got to do. And then you go to the second one. Okay, this one's about the Oregon Trail. I kind of recognize that. And then you go to the third one. All right. What I want you to do is the first thing I want you to do is scan all the questions, get a feel for what you're doing. All right. What they're going to do with these questions is they're going to hit you on different topics, and they're going to hit you on different time periods, right? Like no two time periods are going to be assessed, and no two topics are likely to be assessed, right? Question 3 and 4 in the 2019 exam, in terms of what you're looking at on the screen, they both hit economics, but different time periods, right? This one, it has nothing to do with economics, really. It has more about the Oregon Trail and all of that, and Manifest Destiny and everything else, all right? And then this one is about women, all right, in the revolution. So they're going to give you sort of a diverse array of stuff, all right? First thing you do is you scan all the questions, look at all three, make a determination. I'm going to answer question 3 or answer question number 4, and then start writing, all right? And then when you sit down to write a response, like, for example, if you're going to sit down and write a response to this one, the next thing I want you to do is I want you to look at A, B, and C. Scan A, B, and C, because what we get sometimes is we will get students who don't do that. They will just look at A and not look at B and C here, and they'll start writing, and they'll put something in A that is really a better answer for C. You can't repeat yourself with the same evidence. If I use, for example, in my answer for A, let's say I use something from the historical record for A. I can't use the same piece of evidence again later on. It's got to be a different kind of piece of evidence. So that ends up getting students in trouble because they'll put something for A that really is a better answer for C, or they'll put something for B that really is a better answer for C. So what I want you to do is when you get to a question, you're going to start writing, scan A, B, and C first to make sure you know what you're answering so that you have a feel for where you're at, and then move on and start writing, okay? Anyway, I hope this helped. I wish you guys the best of luck on the APUSH exam. Guys, the APUSH exam is a marathon. It's not a sprint. This is a long test. It's an involved test. This is all about you just pushing and pushing and pushing. And don't get defeated. Don't beat up on yourself. You get to question 1, you're like, I don't know what the answer is. Do the best you can. Move on. Shake it off. Keep rolling. Keep rolling. Keep rolling. All right? If you do that and you put down answers for everything and you try to be as specific as you can and you use evidence, good things are going to come from you. So good luck to you guys, and take care of yourselves.